What's going on, Player Profiler Nation? I'm your host, Matty Kiwoom. I am joined by my fellow trade god brethren, the morning man himself, Mr. Jason Allwine. What is going on, Jay?
Dude, nothing much, man. You know, had a pretty good little weekend. Played some soccer yesterday, last game of my team soccer season, and we won.
All right.
It was one of those it was the last game of the season, so top 4 teams make the playoffs, and there was a 3-way tie for 4th. We were like, all right, we just got to go in, we got to win, we got to score as many goals as possible. We went 4-1, pretty good little soccer game, but one of the other teams fighting for that last spot won 7-0, so we ended up in 5th, not making the playoffs. But good season with the boys, recovering today, ready to get some work. And for those listening, I think we'll have that rookie guide coming out soon, so stay tuned for that.
Rookie guide is going to be fantastic. A lot of really, really great writers go into that. But we're here on Trade Gods today. Yep. We have a dynamite show lined up for this week. We're talking about buys, but more specifically, we're talking about those pass catchers. We're talking about wide receivers to buy. It's going to be exciting. We got not 1, not 2. I'm not going to do the whole countdown because, bitch, we got 10. Got a lot of wide receivers to buy. And then, of course, the TGIF Trade of the Week. We'll be breaking that down. That it has a familiar face attached to it. So you know what? Why don't we just get right on into it, my friend?
Let's do it, man.
It's time to buy and sell.
Okay, Jason.
Yep.
You're telling everyone listening to Trade Gods right now that they need to be buying this wide receiver. He's on the Houston Texans. Is it the former Bill? No, it is Nico Collins. Why should everyone be buying Nico Collins?
Well, I guess now, I mean, really the main reason now is he's the cheapest out of the 3. But also, he was the most productive wide receiver out of these 3 in terms of fantasy football last year, and kind of by a long shot, really. And my favorite thing to look at when I look at Nico Collins' production last year, and for those of you who've tuned into Wake and Take enough now, I've said it enough. It pisses me off, really, how cheap he is right now and the general sentiment around him. Because he only had a 22.7% target share last year, Matty Kiwoom. That was 29th in the league. But he still had the 7th highest points per game with that low target share. He was 7th in points per game with 17.4. He had 1,300 yards, which was 8th in the league. He had 8 touchdowns. That was really, really good. And you can look at his productivity and efficiency with the low opportunity and see 8th in receiving yards, 6th in yards after catch, 11th in touchdowns, 7th in fantasy points per game, 10th in yards per team pass attempt, 9th in yards per reception, 3rd in yards per target, 2nd in yards per route run, 2nd in target premium, 2nd in quarterback rating per target, 4th in points per route run. I mean, 5th in EPA. I'm going on and on about this. Basically, what I'm saying is even with low opportunity last season, Nico Collins was an absolute stud. And he should get about that same amount of opportunity next year. I would be shocked. You can add up. Last year, Stephon Diggs had a 29% target share, 29.8. So we'll just round it up to 30. Nico Collins, 23% target share if you round it up. So right now we're talking about 53% of targets between Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins. Well, Tank Dell, he had about a 24% target share last year. Now, you know, you're talking about 77% of targets between the 3 wide receivers. That's still only 77% of the targets between those 3. There's still plenty of opportunity to go around where all 3 of those could even get more targets. I just don't know why you wouldn't be buying Nico Collins right now based on him already being hyper productive with low opportunity. If anything, now he doesn't have to go against cornerback ones. He'll be even more open with Stephon Diggs kind of taking the extra coverage. And he's the explosive wide receiver on this team. He's the guy who's getting the deep shots, the guy who's getting the red zone targets. I just, at 6'4", 220 pounds, also with that profile and the productivity, and only 25 years old, this is a profile we've been in love with for years. We finally saw the production from it, and now we're all off of it because a 30-year-old wide receiver shows up? Nah, give me Nico.
You know, I love me some Diggs, but I will back you up here on Mr. Nico Collins and just lend some information about Mr. T. Higgins. You know who he is? He's a clear wide receiver too, similar type body frame, wins in similar ways. 2022, he had over 1,000 yards. He had seven receiving touchdowns. He was wide receiver 26 on a points per game basis on an 18.6% target share. Sounds to me like Nico Collins, barring health, of course, it's fantasy football. Well, I think that's what we're looking at his floor, about 13 to 15 fantasy points per game. And if the hysteria is going to take him where the market's telling you that he's he's wide receiver 38, wide receiver 40, then buy. Because I think he is still a top 30 receiver with a clear path. And, like you mentioned, for the reasons that you just mentioned, he has, still has the wide receiver 2, maybe low-end wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. So Nico Collins is by. Let's talk about that trade, though, just kind of as a whole. So Nico, you think can still thrive. Of course, we love it for CJ Stroud. I'm going to ask you this on the spot. Are you selling CJ Stroud because it might be peak market?
No, I think that I know that normally I'm a sell at the top of the market kind of
That's why
thing.
I wanted to ask, yeah.
But I just think that that's a huge mistake. If you sell CJ Stroud right now, even though it is the top of the market, I can't see a reason to. Like, even like, I just don't know if you would really even get enough production. Like, I'm talking like you would have to get like, I don't even know what I would want on top of a Josh Allen.
You need a unicorn offer that's just simply not realistic. Because
and it's just like, even then, it's like you have a guy going into the second year of his career who just set the world on fire. Now having one of the best weapon cores, I can't sell that player, man. He's young with a ton of production already. The team's being built around him. It seems that they're going to be competing for his entire career. It's just, that's an asset that never really comes around. And it's just, I can't move on from that. I just can't.
It'd have to be something like, I have the 101, the 102, and the 105 as Superflex. I'll give you all 3. Yep. Sign me up. That might be something I'll do. But other than that, I don't see a player package because I have Stroud as my quarterback 4. I can't imagine someone giving you Josh Allen and then something, Pat Mahomes or, Jalen Hurts and something. I just can't imagine that. But one last question about the trade on the Houston side. Then we'll kind of tackle the Buffalo side. Is this really bad for Tank Dell?
I don't think so. I mean, so we do have to talk about Tank Dell here for a second because Tank Dell is still more expensive than Diggs, still more expensive than Nico Collins. And I know we like Tank Dell a lot, and I know he was hyper productive when on the field. But I mean, you look at the ages. He's 24 and a half. Nico Collins is 25.0. Basically the same age despite being in the league only 1 year. And kind of the big concern with Tank Dell is that he'd struggle to stay healthy. And that's literally what we saw last year is he struggled to stay healthy.
That's
and I know it was towards the end of the year. But it was like, we've seen it now. And so I would just be a little bit cautious buying him. I'm not selling him, to also answer your question. Like, I think ultimately he's a hold because he's so good when he's on the field. But, I do think that there's still some concerns. But ultimately, you're still talking about a wide receiver on the Houston Texans, an offense that even Noah Brown was scoring 30 points in. Last year, there were 7 games that both Nico Collins and Tank Dell were on the field together, and they both averaged over 18 points per game in that span. And so I think he's still going to be productive. And we remember CJ Stroud asked the Texans to draft him. Obviously, that connection is still going to be there. So I think he'll be good. It's just I'm more concerned about what his health can be long-term, given his frame's not really going to change, and we've already seen the injury. But I still think he'll produce when he's out there. And we have IR spots for a reason, right, guys?
That's why you want those things up in your leagues. But I think we should look at the Houston Texans offense very, very similarly that we look to the Cincinnati Bengals offense of the last couple of years. And I think that if you just place those 3 players in those 3 roles, you're going to get 3 productive wide receivers in fantasy. 1's a flex and 2 are perennial starters. Yep. Quarterbacks have similar skill sets and, of course, the same running back. Joe Mixon was on both of those. So I think we're going to see a lot of the same type of fantasy output. So I'm not as scared of the Diggs transition for all the above as I've seen. So I'm with you on that. I'm going to talk about – oh, go ahead.
Well, and I mean, like, I hate saying this, but I mean, like, Stephon Diggs is 30 years old, like, going to a new team. And I mean, like, it's not even like guaranteed that he's going to be the main target here. Like, he could just – I mean, I know they're paying him a lot of money, but it is only a 1-year rental. Like, I mean, like, it could be pretty consolidated between the 3. Like, I don't think it's like set in stone that Diggs gets 30+% and both Dell and Nico get about 20 something. I think like all three could get 25%, you know, like it's just, I know that Diggs is that kind of alpha guy, but I also do think that Stroud likes his 2 wide receivers he had last year and is going to want to get them the ball too.
Yeah, it's going to be great it's also going to be great for Stephon Diggs. He's going to go to a team now that has other weapons. That's been the knock on him at the end of the season, in my opinion, is that his hasn't really been able to beat the entire focus of the opposing defense. Now the opposing defense can't do that. Tank Dell will make you pay. Nico Collins will make you pay. I mean, Dalton Schultz, Joe Mixon. Those are the 4th and 5th probably in the hierarchy, and both of those are pretty good players. I want to take it to the other side of this trade. We'll kind of wrap up the trade talk. We'll also bring in my first wide receiver buy of the day. Is Curtis Samuel. He's just cheap right now. He's wide receiver 56 on Keep Trade Cut. And I think with the trade, a lot of people who roster Curtis Samuel are now going, sucker, give me a 4th. And I'll be the guy who I guess maybe might be a sucker and say, okay, give me this. Because as of right now, he has the biggest contract amongst the wide receiver room. He has the most experience amongst the wide receiver room and the most career production amongst everyone in the wide receiver room. Of course, Buffalo will be bringing in a rookie, but there is risk with bringing in a rookie, especially the ones in this class as where they'll be projected to pick. Brian Thomas, Adonai Mitchell. Those guys may not be the archetype to dominate in targets. Curtis Samuel was brought in for a reason. And if you remove his injury-plagued 2021, he does have over 600 receiving yards in 4 straight, so 4 of 5. And he has 3 or more touchdowns. He's a perennial double-digit fantasy producer on a weekly basis. And no, that is not the player that's going to get you over the hill, but that's the player that's going to give you a low opportunity cost to bring aboard. Who could be a big flash in the pan, even if it's for just the early part of 2024. We need these type of value spikes, whether it be in fantasy points or trade value. This is how you can kind of take advantage. And I think right now, the people who have been rostering him couldn't sell him for a bag of peanuts.
Right.
Now they go, give me a 4th. And you could say, all right, bet, here's my 4th for Curtis Samuel. And all of a sudden, you may be looking at 20 points 3 of the first 4 weeks, or 20 points 2 of the first 5 weeks, or maybe he just goes on to, set his career high with something like 11.5 over the whole course of a season. He did have 14.1 fantasy points per game over 15 games in 2020. So it's a long ways away, but it's just enough of a path has been there in his performance profile historically. Give me the shot. Give me the shot on the guy that the Buffalo Bills said, we're going to bring him in.
Yeah, this Buffalo Bills situation, personally, I don't know where to go with it. I think that 4th for Curtis Samuel seems like a fun bet, but I don't know if there's a single Bill I want to buy right now that's not named Josh Allen, because I could see it kind of going like the Chiefs last year, where it's just hard to guess who's going to score the fantasy points in terms of the receivers. It's just, I kind of want to see it first. Like, I want to see maybe the first few weeks of the season and then be like, okay, like now I see the usage. I know that's not necessarily good value when it comes to trading, but I can't pull the trigger on even Khalil Shakir. I think Dalton Kincaid's got a bit too inflated. Curtis Samuel, I think, is a fun one though. I mean, they don't give someone no money for no reason. I think you could see some gadget usage. I don't know. I want to see who they draft. I want to see how it all plays out. And, that maybe just means I'm just out on the Bills right now as a whole.
Yeah, makes sense. You can't really get too excited about any one of them. So I guess each of the guys have the person. Now, Dalton Kincaid, of course, if you roster him, you're pumped. I think this means a lot of targets are coming his way. But buying into Dalton Kincaid is going to cost you like
too much
5 tight end price, and that might be too much for me to want to jump in. So he would not be on my tight end buy list, but we're not talking about tight end buys. We're talking about wide receiver buys. We each have a few more to get into, but before we do, let's hear from today's sponsor.
Hey, people always ask me, what's the World Series of Fantasy? What's the Super Bowl of Fantasy? And it's easy. It's the FFPC. Their signature Players Championship has a $6 million prize pool, and their best ball leagues start in February. And they're the answer to so many questions. Hey, what's the best place to get a Dynasty Orphan? Well, you can adopt a Dynasty Orphan at the FFPC right now. There's more orphans at the FFPC than anywhere else on the internet. That's why we partner with them. So if you want to play fantasy football for low, medium, high stakes, you love Dynasty, you love best ball, you love seasonal leagues, all types of fantasy footballers need to go to the FFPC. And remember, use promo code Underworld. Promo code Underworld gets you $25 off your first team. Promo code Underworld, $25 off your first team, no matter what the format is, at the FFPC. Go get it.
Jason Allwine, Matty, Kiwoom, Trade Gods, wide receiver buys is the topic of today's show. What is the next wide receiver that you're trying to buy?
I'm going to Mr. Alpha, DK Metcalf. It's interesting, and I know he's always, expensive to acquire, but I think right now it's about fair. He's sitting about wide receiver 24, and that's just what he's done. I understand that all of us, myself included, especially you, Matty Kiwoom, we've been waiting for that year that he finishes as a top 10 wide receiver, and it just hasn't happened. He just hasn't shown the consistency. And I'm not even expecting the consistency to really come. But at wide receiver 24, I think that's where I'm comfortable paying in. He's been top 24 the past 3 seasons in points per game, and he's had 1,000 yards in back-to-back seasons. He's had a ridiculous amount of red zone targets that just haven't necessarily translated into touchdowns. At some point, that might happen. And he's still showing us the ceiling. He had a 3-touchdown, 134-yard game last season. And he's done that season after season, just one of those monster games. And I just think, again, that he's outperformed his current value in the last 3 years. So that's already enough of an opportunity for growth. But, I mean, he's 6'3", 230 pounds and runs a 4.3 40 and has really good catches and has a really good workout metric profile. And Tyler Lockett's only getting older. JSN didn't end up being the target hog that we thought he could be. And now they're bringing in a Pac-12 offensive coordinator and potentially bringing in some Michael Penix to reunite him and get some throwing action on that offense instead of the plain old just run it with Kenneth Walker all the time. I think DK Metcalf can finally be unlocked a little bit. And he's still only 26 years old, despite how long he's been in the league. So I'm going to buy into him. I think that I'll be happy with it. And I think that, again, it's only going to get better from here. I really do, especially once Tyler Lockett inevitably moves on.
Clay Mosley from Dynasty Trades in 5 was on the Mind to Mansion with Matt last week, and he shares your excitement to try to buy DK Metcalf. And I think he's a safe buy. Yeah, he's not wowed us, but he's also been pretty damn reliable. Yeah. So I think that's a good pull there. I'm also going to go with someone that I think is an old reliable. I know we kind of differ on this player, but I'm going with Deontay Johnson, the new pass.
You and your DJ.
I love me some DJ for the Carolina Panthers. When I just look at his profile over the past, his whole career, really, starting as a rookie, 92 targets, 144 targets, 169 targets, 147 targets, 87 targets last year in just 13 games. This guy just commands targets because he can separate among some of the best in the class. Dave Canales is now the head coach in Carolina, and he's going to be tasked with the tough project of resurrecting and causing Bryce Young to be the 101 that they drafted him to be.
Yep.
And I think by bringing in a Deontay Johnson, he's grabbing his Chris Godwin type player. And right now, Chris Godwin, or I should say last year, Chris Godwin he was 12.3 fantasy points per game. He only had 2 touchdowns. The year before, 3 receiving touchdowns, 14.9 fantasy points per game. And that's all I'm saying that because it's on volume.
Yeah.
So if Deontay Johnson was the guy that was brought in to be the volume guy in this Bryce Young and Dave Canales offense, I'm looking to buy me some Deontay Johnson because right now he's listed on Keep Your Trends as wide receiver 40. I got him higher in my ranks. So I think that he's a clear buy in terms of what the markets are telling me. Also, I just believe in the player. I like the player. I think he's the type of guy I always try to get on my fantasy teams in my 1-point PPR leagues, of course, because the passing volume is there with DJ. Now, this is going to sound funny because I did just trade him away in a league, but it really had to do more with the overall package of the deal as opposed to how it went down. So, yeah, that's what I'm buying here. I'm buying me some Deontay Johnson. Let's keep the train moving. What's your next buy candidate at the wide receiver position?
Jason Allwine has a type, and that type is hyper athletic beasts of a wide receiver. And my next one is 6'4", 210-pound hyper athlete Christian Watson. And this is just kind of, just an arbitrage play really at this point. He's wide receiver 50 on Keep Trade Cut right now, and he's been as high as wide receiver 15 out of his rookie season after he kind of ended on a tear, tying Randy Moss's record to touchdown over a 3-game span or whatever it was, just on fire. And then he gets injured. And then he starts the year injured. And then he gets injured again. And then he gets injured again. The guy can't stay healthy. And ultimately, that's completely deflated his price tag to the point to where it is worth taking the risk on this athlete, even if he gets hurt again. Because I've talked about it before, you're injury prone until you're not. Christian McCaffrey was injury prone for years. What's he done? Back-to-back RB1 seasons. Deebo Samuel, same team, right? But same thing.
Yeah.
An injury-prone player. Then he goes and gets a wide receiver 5 finish, and then like a wide receiver 15 finish, and only misses a couple games the next few seasons. It goes on and on about these players who spend their career hurt, and then all of a sudden get a healthy season, and people remember how explosive and how good they are, and they're impossible to trade for again. And Christian Watson has just shown so much ceiling. Even last season had that 3-game stretch where he scored 4 touchdowns over him, 10 points, 20 points, 27 points, and then got hurt and missed the rest of the season. But, I mean, he's had 11 points per game in back-to-back seasons. This Packers offense is electric, and he's one of the cheapest players to acquire on it. I mean, Romeo Doubs is about the same price. Jaden Reed is more expensive. Josh Jacobs has gone bonkers in terms of his value. Jordan Love's expensive. Even the tight ends, you can't really choose which one you want between Kraft and Musgrave. So I think you should go ahead and buy into Christian Watson at his wide receiver 50 price tag. Enjoy the spike weeks, and if he gets hurt again, throw him onto your IR and try again next year.
He's the most frustrating asset in Dynasty for me because I loved him coming into the draft.
Same.
Didn't get him, couldn't buy when he was good, and then didn't pull the trigger when he was hurt. And now that price is starting to creep back up, and all it takes is him being on the field to make it, like you said, really, really tough to trade for him. So love that call. I'm going to go with a wide receiver a little bit down the ranks. I'm saying to buy Darnell Mooney. He's come up on the show before, but I want to talk about him again. Right now, the market on Keep Trade Cut says he's wide receiver 70. And then when I peek over to my Dynasty ranks at wide receiver, I see him at wide receiver 57. New head coach Raheem Morris called him an elite separator, which is the utmost of compliment that a receiver can get from a coach. Yeah. And he's got the 4.38 speed. He's got a prior season with 1,000 or more receiving yards under his belt. And then when you look at the price tag that he commanded, I believe he got $1 more million guaranteed than Gabe Davis did. So if you're in on Gabe Davis because the confidence in the contract, then you should be in on Darnell Mooney with the same type of confidence in this contract. And he could be that downfield threat, that burner, that piece of their offense that Zach Robinson can really highlight, of course, with Kirk Cousins now at the helm. So most teams, most players in Dynasty right now aren't even thinking about Darnell Mooney. And I think now's the perfect time to swoop in and get him as an add-on to a trade, or just try to pull that swift ninja move and make a trade without them really realizing what they have in a Darnell Mooney. But that time is coming up short because I think once Atlanta does not take a premier pass catcher in the first 3 or 4 rounds, the light bulb's going to go off that, oh my God, if we believe in Kirk Cousins and we believe in Drake London, we believe that Kyle Pitts, that this offense could be something magical, well, then I think it's time to start believing in Darnell Mooney to be a piece of that as well. So I'm trying to buy now before the hype gets too high on Darnell Mooney. Who is your next wide receiver?
Before I say it, I do just want to say I like all of those wide receivers that kind of got that contract. I think it was Darnell Mooney, Deontay Johnson, Gabe Davis, and Curtis Samuel all got that like 3-year, 40
around 30. Yeah.
So I just, all of those I think are interesting, and I'm very curious to see what happens like just next season, just between them, like if they do get that volume or what, because I think that'll be a very valuable lesson going forward, what to do with those players. And I like all of those situations. They're very, very interesting, and any one of them could really blow up. So I know we're not talking Gabe Davis, but I think we could throw him in there too, even though we hate him.
Sure.
Could be interesting. I think we talked about him in a later episode. Anyway, I'll go ahead and move on. And I'm going to lump these two together because I've talked about them on a Trade Gods episode. Go search like undervalued dynasty studs, I think was the episode. But it's DeAndre Hopkins and Cooper Kupp, both of which are just incredibly purchasable right now. DeAndre Hopkins is wide receiver 62 on Keep Trade Cut, and Cooper Kupp is wide receiver 36 on Keep Trade Cut. And both of these guys are alphas of alphas. Like they are just true top dog wide receivers. And in this game, they just age gracefully. They just simply do. And in DeAndre Hopkins' case, it seemed like a down year last year, but he still had 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns, still was second in dominator rating, still had the second most air yards, still had the second most deep targets, still was really good in route participation and snap share and target share. And even, one of our favorite metrics here was second in unrealized air yards, still showing the untapped potential. And I know Calvin Ridley showed up, but I don't really care. We've talked about it a lot on Trade Gods, on a ton of stuff around Player Profiler. Mind of Mansion's talking about it. This Titans team is passing the ball a ridiculous amount next season. Get any pass catcher you can, and you might as well get the one that's probably going to the Hall of Fame and still hasn't lost a step in DeAndre Hopkins. And kind of the same could be said about Cooper Kupp, who last year only played in 12 games, but still had 20 or more points in 4 of them, and still finished top 10 in red zone targets, despite missing a quarter of the season with his injury. I think next year we're going to look back and be like, wow, why did Cooper Kupp fall so much? Just last year, even in October, even when we knew that he was on IR for the first 4 weeks of the season, he was still sitting at wide receiver 13 on Keep Trade Cut, and he's all the way down to 36. Puka Nacua is in the top 10. And I asked you this question when last time we talked about Cooper Kupp on the Undervalued Studs episode, but would you really be surprised if Cooper Kupp outscored Puka Nacua next season? I think
can't be.
You can't. It's Cooper Kupp.
No, you can't be. Yeah, exactly. If you could guarantee health right now, I think people would be shocked at how 50-50 that answer would be.
Yeah, and so I'm buying into him, especially if I'm competing. And I'll just go ahead and say it. If you can also get Matthew Stafford, I know this is a wide receiver episode, but he's also just incredibly cheap to acquire. And that's just a really good budget stack for the competing teams out there.
My next buy is one of my old trusted favorite players in the history of the National Football League. Wide receiver from the Cleveland Browns, Amari Cooper. Right now, he's being valued around wide receiver 40. But when I look at my Dynasty ranks, I still have him as my wide receiver 26 in Dynasty. Mm-hmm. I look at a player that let me just go off. This is going to be a long list. So sit back, relax. It's going all the way back to 2015. Wide receiver 27, wide receiver 16, wide receiver 31, wide receiver 21, wide receiver 14, wide receiver 21, wide receiver 25, 17, and wide receiver 17. Just last year, he had 1,200 yards. 1,800 air yards, the most in his career. He only had 5 receiving touchdowns, the tied for least in his career, and he was wide receiver 17. This guy has yet to be a wide receiver 40 on a points per game basis throughout his entire career. Mm-hmm. So and most people just throw him away at this time of the year. I'm buying. Give me my Amari Cooper shares. And what? So now all of a sudden people are going to believe in Jerry Jeudy? Come on. So I heard the last 2 years, how for years, how bad he is. He can't win. His route win rate is horrific, and it is. Mm-hmm. But all of a sudden now he goes there and can't be. Amari Cooper lost his job. Why? Because they gave him a bad contract? No, Amari Cooper has always been him. You want to talk about the most hyped wide receiver prospects? A lot of people tuned in might not remember. They might not have been playing it as long as we have. Amari Cooper was as touted as a wide receiver prospect as Marvin Harrison Jr. is this year. Yeah. He went 4th overall. Yeah. He was in the Heisman Trophy race. Amari Cooper at Alabama was him. He was a problem. And he has been nothing but a stud in the NFL. And yet he continues to get disrespect coming off his most productive season of his career And now all of a sudden the Browns are poised to be a better team. And we're going to get hopefully a right of the ship, Deshaun Watson. I don't know why this guy would be wide receiver 40. So I'm buying Amari Cooper. I love me Amari Cooper. I will never not try to have Amari Cooper in my fantasy teams.
No, I love it. And it's so funny. You talk about the Jerry Jeudy contract and how bad it was. This is the Cleveland Browns we're talking about. They're notorious for making terrible decisions. So I don't get it. Like I think Jerry Jeudy could be fine, right? But on the same vein, Amari Cooper's still the alpha in that offense. And it's just I agree with you. Buy him. Buy some Cooper.
Give me my Amari Cooper, baby. All right, Jason, you got one last buy right here. So why don't we dive right into it? Let's see here your fifth and final guy.
We're going with Hollywood Brown. We're staying in topical discussions, and we're going to go with a Chiefs receiver. We don't really have to get too much into the Rashee Rice situation because I don't think it affects Marquise Brown next season. It could make it really good, but I think he's still going to be good even if Rashee Rice is out there just because he's a different wide receiver. And they've moved on from Marcus Valdes-Scantling. Mecole Hardman, I don't think, is coming back after that weird contract at the end of the season. He's going to be the deep threat. And the beautiful thing about Marquise Brown is he's been that, and it just hasn't happened. I don't know what it is, whether it be drops, whether it be bad quarterback play, or just something not happening. I think it's going to happen. I just think it's going to happen on the Kansas City Chiefs. I think Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback to unlock him. He's had 1,000 air yards in 4 straight seasons. Only one of those years he actually reached 1,000 yards. And last season, he was 11th in unrealized air yards with 789 of them. And it was so bad. He was 96th in catchable target rate. Only 56% of his targets last year were even deemed catchable by our game charters. It was just impossible for him to succeed last season. And so I think he could bounce back in a big way on this Kansas City Chiefs offense next year. He's averaged 10 or more points per game pretty much every season in the league. Last year was 9.6, so you could throw an asterisk on it if you really want to, but then we're just getting too technical. Guys produced. He's had a ton of opportunity, and it just hasn't quite clicked. And I just think Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and that offense, it's finally going to click. He's going to have those spike weeks, and he's finally going to be Hollywood Brown.
I'm going to help drive this point home. I want everyone listening to close their eyes. I want everyone to listen to my voice and picture what I'm saying. Remember that ball clanking off the hands of MVS that should have been a 40-yard touchdown. Remember all of the deep passes in which, Justin Watson and MVS and all of these guys could not handle. Well, imagine a world where not all of those players, but one single player makes 80% of those catches. That, ladies and gentlemen, is Hollywood Brown, regardless of what they come out of the draft with, regardless of Rashee Rice. They've got their new deep threat in Hollywood Brown, and don't get it twisted. Hollywood Brown is hungry. He did not get a lucrative deal. He did not sign the 3 for 30. He signed a 1-year, put it up or shut it up type of contract. You don't think he's going to do that in the Chiefs? I'm with you, Jason. Buy Hollywood Brown. The last one that I'm going to go to, the last dynasty buy at wide receiver that I'm going to talk about. It's going to be quick because the analysis doesn't need to be spoken of. The player speaks for himself. It's Justin Jefferson. Wide receiver 1. The only reason why I want to bring him up and put him on the radars of people who listen to TG is you might have a chance to get him at market value.
Yep.
No, you might. This is a guy that it's like, what do you want for Justin Jefferson? The return counteroffer is always ridiculous, unrealistic, and turns you off from any type of negotiations. But I think now there is a window that might ever so be cracked open where you can get a team builder who rosters Jefferson to negotiate in good faith.
Yeah.
And that alone, for me, has put a goal on all of my dynasty teams where I do not have Jefferson to kick the tires, see what they're thinking about. Because if all of a sudden, maybe this is the roster where I have the 106, the 107, the 109, take a couple of those and a player, and all of a sudden I would have done it, I would have jumped for joy to complete that trade in October.
Right. Fast
forward here to March or April. I think I'd still do it. And I think now is the opportunity that the person rostering Justin Jefferson may actually say, let me think about that. And that's enough for me to want to buy Justin Jefferson.
Yeah. We talked about it a lot on the show, right? Like a buy window doesn't necessarily have to be he's cheaper. The buy window for certain players could just be they're available. And that just like open volumes. It's like this player you are never able to trade for. Do it. Do it.
Yeah.
Do it while Sam Darnold is his projected quarterback and not Bo Nix or JJ McCarthy or Drake May, whoever they end up with.
Or just everyone sees that Darnold to Justin Jefferson looks great.
Oh, yeah, it could be totally fine.
And it's over. It's a wrap.
Let's talk about this, Matty.
It's over.
Kevin O'Connell and Kyle Shanahan, they're friends. They work together. That signing's not happening, right? If Kevin O'Connell isn't calling Shanahan and like, seriously, like, come on, dude, like, be honest with me. Did Sam Darnold improve last year? Do you think he could be okay, at least as a stopgap? Kyle Shanahan was honest with him there. He was like, yeah, I'm sure. Like he took some steps forward. You could see, the small sample size last year where he went in for Brock Purdy. He was fine. Like, I think that, Sam Darnold would be all right for you guys, especially in your system. It's similar to what we run. You've got good weapons. I think Sam could help you out there. They give him 15 guaranteed. I mean, that's not nothing. So I like it. I like it a lot, regardless of what that quarterback happens. He's still Justin Jefferson, guys.
Ring, 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 ring. Hey, Kyle, what do you think about Sam Darnold? Well, I traded Trey Lance, didn't I? Click.
There you go.
There you go. So 10 receivers to buy in Dynasty right now. But that's not it. The show's not quite over. We're going to talk about the TGIF trade of the week. So stick around for that. Oh, two familiar faces from the TGIF making a massive type deal. 8-player, 9 asset deal between our guy, Jason Allwine, and Tyler Knable, our other premier player profiler.
Yep.
He's TGIF, and he said, oh, well, not only will I get on TGIF trade of the week once, but let me be a back-to-back producer. But this one we had to have on because it involves Tyler and my man Jason. So I'm just going to leave you the floor, okay? And last week I ambushed you with who won the trade. I'm not going to tell you. I can't hit you with that. You're in the trade.
Yeah.
So just Vernon, why did you make this trade? And why do you think it gave your team an advantage? Let me put that caveat on it.
Yeah, so this is definitely a messy trade, and I know I've had old man Jason, Mr. Allwine on the show before, where I hate messy trades.
We need Mr. Allwine back soon. I hope there's a trade in TGIF that happens real soon that we can get Mr. Allwine back.
And I think this is close to that, but I think where you can kind of figure out the pieces enough to where it's not too bad. And ultimately, I made this move because this is the second part of a decision that I unfortunately had to make. Guys, my team in the Trade Gods Invitational League was not going to be competitive how it was just a few weeks ago. I had no quarterbacks, and really my only blue chip asset was Jahmyr Gibbs. And I obviously have some other good players. Like I've got good players, but no one of the Jahmyr Gibbs type caliber on my squad. And so I made the decision to sell Jahmyr Gibbs. I sold Jahmyr Gibbs for quite a haul. I got Tyreek Hill. I got Matthew Stafford. I got Cooper Kupp. I think I got Mike Williams. And I think a third also, like something fun, like it was a fun little trade for me.
You can't just say it's something fun. Mike Williams, you know how I feel about that. You just got a 0 asset.
Or an IR asset that scores me 20 points 1 week.
That you have on your bench.
Yeah, it is what it is. But it was just something. It was like him or, nothing. It was basically a free piece at that point. But it doesn't matter. This is the trade we're talking about. So after I made that move, I was looking at my roster. And then after trading Jahmyr Gibbs, now I'm weak at running back. And then also we're looking at a team that now has Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, DeAndre Hopkins, Deebo Samuel, Austin Eckler, and Brian Robinson. Like it was just dust. I had an old team, even if they were some competitive players. And we just talked about the values of Cooper Kupp and DeAndre Hopkins right now. Cooper Kupp, wide receiver 36, DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver 62. But that's not the case with other old wide receiver Tyreek Hill. He's like wide receiver 12. And that's because he's a game breaker. Like he truly is a guy that can take your team to the championship just by being on your roster. So it was hard to move from him. but I felt confident in the rest of my pieces. DeAndre Hopkins, Cooper Kupp, Nico Collins, George Pickens, my now Matthew Stafford quarterback room, that I kind of wanted to help get a little bit younger and also get into that running back market. So I identified Josh Jacobs as a running back that I thought I wouldn't lose too much weekly production while also getting a bit younger. Because he's only 26 years old. I think he could be a true bell cow for this team. And I think he'll be someone that hopefully, if he doesn't get injured, can help me out a lot next year. And then I just get all these fun coupons. We talked about Gabe Davis a little bit. I think that he has some potential in this Jaguars offense for at least some spike weeks if we can figure it out. And Michael Mayer, I think, is a buy right now. I mean, his trajectory could be exactly like Trey McBride's, where it's just a disappointing rookie season, smashes year 2, and all of a sudden he's a top 5 dynasty asset again. And I traded away all my thirds last year. I really did. I traded away all my draft picks, and I really regretted that. So my new strategy now is to try to just soak up these thirds and see what can happen. So going to have some fun coupons there. And one of the sagas on my Trade Gods team is roster space. It has been a real issue. So Demario Douglas, Tyquan Thornton, Jonnu Smith, they were just kind of sitting there. And I kind of hated moving on from the Patriots receivers because I do think they'll get a value jump after the draft if they draft a quarterback and not a wide receiver. But ultimately, I kind of needed the roster space. It's what put this trade together. It's what got those extra thirds. It's what, gets Jonnu Smith off my roster. And ultimately, I felt like a move I had to make. I hate moving on from Tyreek Hill, but given I had so many other older win now wide receivers that were just so much cheaper, I thought it was an interesting opportunity to switch and help with my kind of team roster construction because I kind of wanted a young tight end. I have Kyle Pitts, but I mean, we've seen it before with Kyle Pitts. He's just frustrating to manage and hasn't hit. So it depends on Michael Mayer. And just, it's a 14-team league. So Gabe Davis holds some value. I don't care what anyone says. So I think, Tyler probably wins because he gets Tyreek Hill, but I'm just very, very happy with how this has helped my team construction.
I like this trade for you. I think I give you the slight edge in terms of my preferred side. And the reason is I still love Josh Jacobs. I still think Josh Jacobs is a top 10 running back in Dynasty. He's a perennial producer now in a role on a team that I think is going to use him to his fullest capabilities.
Yeah.
Where this trade would have been an absolute slam dunk for me is if you would have gotten the 208 or if you could have swapped, and this is just hypotheticals. I don't even know if they're on his team, but if this trade consisted of that being the 208, I would love it on your end. Or if this, instead of Gabe Davis, let's call it one of those buy candidates that we just mentioned earlier in the show. Maybe, Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Deontay Johnson for me. Even something like a Calvin Ridley. Something if you could have gotten that type of player instead of Gabe Davis, because this is not best ball, so the spike weeks you could miss, then I would absolutely love this trade for you. But even how it's comprised now, I think getting Mayer kind of as a throw-in makes sense. Yeah. You got the future picks, the future pick and the pick in the draft coming up, which it's just better to have it than to not. Let's just be honest. Even though they may not give you a return of a player, but we've all been in drafts where all of a sudden you could turn that 308 into a competent vet into a future. Things get silly when people are available that other team members or other league mates want to roster. So I like this trade for you, but Tyler's made some two bangers 2 weeks in a row. And I was just looking at the group sleeper chat, a few hours ago, he might be ready for a three-peat here if we want to bring another Tyler trade on next week. We got to get Tyler Knable on.
Yeah, we got to just get Tyler on.
Let's get him on next week. I know this is on the episode we're kind of scheduling, but Tyler, if you're watching, come on the Trade Gods and we'll put another one of your trades up for Trade of the Week and we'll get him popping because he's got the juices flowing in this league and he deserves a chance to come talk it up with the gods.
He does.
But that's it. That's the show. That is the TGIF Trade of the Week. 10 buy candidates that you need to get in Dynasty right now. So Jason, the floor is yours, my friend. Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on my own personal Twitter at JFootballWine. I finally paid for that blue check mark and finally trying to work the Twitter game. I'm actually posting threads and stuff now, so you actually have a reason to follow me. I feel like the last few times I haven't really actually been using it. I'm just retweeting stuff, but I'm trying to figure out Twitter personally, so go follow me there, please. So I push for 1,000 followers. I'm at like 750 right now, so help me
get
over
to 1,000 people.
Yeah, get me to 1,000 guys. Yeah, 1,000 of you should watch this episode, so all of you go follow me on Twitter. And then my morning show, as mentioned at the beginning of the show, I'm the morning man. Tune in Monday through Friday, Wake and Take on this very channel, 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. And then, of course, just follow Player Profiler on all the social media channels. We have an account, and we're posting great content daily, so go follow us there.
Absolutely. You can find me on X at Matty Kiwoom. We got Trade Gods every Wednesday, the game plan every Saturday. Jason's coming on, not this weekend, but next weekend's episode. He will be my guest on the game plan. Blue Chips is going to be back this week. We're talking about my big board. Next week, we'll be talking about Mock Draft 4.0, and you can find both of those things at playerprofiler.com. The Hurdle every Tuesday with my man Cody Carpentier is here at the network. The Futurecast, the latest episode with John Lobb and Memphis Young, 3-round rookie mock. Check that out. We're full on, baby. We are in it to win it. And of course, I can't plug this enough. Make sure that you subscribe to the Player Profiler YouTube channel. Put the notifications on because the draft content for NFL Draft Weekend is going to be bananas. We got all the guys going to the house in Detroit. It's going to be fantastic. I cannot wait. Boots on the ground at the draft, coverage in Detroit. We're doing it like no one else is doing it in the space, and I'm very, very proud of it. So be excited for that. Make sure while you're in the given mood, make sure you're liking this video. Leave a comment. Ask us about trade in your league. We'll get to it. We love answering in the comments on the YouTube channel as well as everywhere else. I'm Matty Kiwoom. He's Jason Allwine. We are the Trade Gods, and we'll see you next week. Peace.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All-In package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.